What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Adventure Outpost. Another weekend has come and gone, and it is once again time to talk those juicy box office numbers. It was a stellar weekend here at the box office. We had another huge release this past weekend with the release of John Wick Chapter 4, and it was a stellar weekend here at the box office. Another franchise best here in March. March has just been blowing away expectations for the most part. We are 4 weeks in, and each week except one, every single franchise movie has put up stellar numbers, franchise best numbers, to make it the best in the entry as well as staff dollars wise. I'm fucking all over the place with words tonight. I cannot speak. It's because I just came back from seeing John Wick, and I am so goddamn blown away from the epic masterpiece that movie just took me on that I am still at a loss for words for even talking about what I'm even supposed to be talking about. And that is John Wick. That movie was just an absolute masterpiece in action. It is one of the best action movies I think I've ever seen in my life. That movie was just a resounding success. It took you on an epic fucking journey. And I can't believe that in 2023, not only are we going to get that, but we're also getting Mission Impossible in July. Between Keanu Reeves and Tom Cruise, these two guys just stalwarts in keeping action alive. And not only keeping action alive, but going above and beyond the line of duty to make these movies absolute perfection. The stuff John Wick, the stuff Keanu Reeves did in this movie as John Wick, absolutely legendary. The stuff all of the stunt crew did in this movie is absolutely legendary. And it is fucking criminal that there is not an award that capitalizes on everything that they do at the Academy Awards. It is fucking absurd. So the Academy, you better get your shit together and make a stunt category, because the men and women that put their bodies on the line for these movies absolutely deserve some goddamn recognition. And another one, Academy, I will say this: if John Wick Chapter 4 is not at least nominated for Best Cinematography next year, then nobody in the Academy likes movies, because that was one of the most beautifully shot movies I've ever seen. Every single shot was just dripping with just fucking stellar shot after stellar shot. The locations were absolutely incredible. Just everything about the shot selection and the choreography between the action scenes and just Paris and Osaka and the fucking Morocco again, like it looked fucking beautiful. And that movie should absolutely be recognized next year come award season, because it was one of the best movies. I'm sure by the end of this year we will continue to be saying that this was one of the best movies to be released this past year. But that's enough singing the movie's praises. Let's see how it did money-wise. We're time to dive in, and we're trying to see how this movie did this weekend. And like we said, it was a franchise best. We're going to start off, as we always do, with our tracking for the 2023 box office week over week. We take a look here at that chart really quick. As you see right now, we are in the 12th week of the year. We did it this weekend. $114 million was a positive 31.4% over the previous week of 87,000. So once again, we are over the $100 million mark. If we take a look, we were only able to do that in week 1, week 7, week 9, week 10, and week 12. Now that makes 5 weeks now out of the 12 weeks of the year that we have been over $100 million. So we're chugging along. We're keeping a nice pace. It's going to be interesting to see if we can continue that next week. It will be interesting to see what the holdover is for John Wick, if it's still able to do enough that'll help us hit over that $100 million, because it is very questionable to see what Dungeons and Dragons is going to do next week. But that's next week. We're not going to get to that just yet. We're still talking about the absolute stonking success that was John Wick. So we won't waste any more time. We'll dive right into the top 10 for this previous week, and let's dive into all that good stuff. So we look for the weekend of March 24th to March 26th. In first place, another franchise best. March just absolutely chock full of franchise bests. John Wick Chapter 4 takes number 1. It brings in $73 million off of a $100 million budget. That is an absolute resounding success right there. John Wick, with each franchise, with each movie, has been able to consistently not only outpace how good the movies are, but is also able to do better and better here at the box office. You don't see that very often with their movies that have been able to continue that trajectory of being better with each and every movie, that it gets better franchise performances with each and every movie. That is a tough thing to do that not many movies are able to pull off. And John Wick has been a franchise that has absolutely been able to pull that off, with each movie making more and more money, to an absolute resounding success here, where John Wick Chapter 4 paying dividends, $73 million million opening weekend, $100 million budget. This movie is absolutely not only going to make its budget back, but it is going to just be printing money. If we look obviously at worldwide, this movie already passes its initial budget. I think worldwide it made something along the lines of 160 million. We're going to take a look at later when we see worldwide how that turned out. But still, domestically 73 million. By next weekend, already will probably be over the $100 million mark domestically. So this movie is an absolute resounding success. Another resounding success in second place, Creed 3 manages to hold the second spot after 4 weeks in theaters, drops only 32.1%, takes in $10 million to bring its total domestic haul to $140 million now off of a $75 million budget. Will be interesting to see how this movie goes forward now, especially after Jonathan Majors' arrest, where he was arrested for allegedly some domestic, still can't talk, alleged domestic abuse. In third place, a movie that is just tanking on impact, was actually taking a left hook from Jonathan Majors, is Shazam! Fury of the Gods in its second week, dropping a absolutely fucking horrible 67.8%. That is just fucking horrible, especially for a movie like this, big budget movie like this. It needs some absolute Hail Mary prayers right now if it's going to make anything worthwhile. It takes in $9.7 million to bring its total domestic haul to $46 million of a $125 million budget. So still a long ways to go to be profitable here. Not a good look that you're already being beat by a movie that's already been in theaters for 4 weeks. So Shazam needs to do a lot of magic if it's going to make itself some greenbacks right here. In fourth place, we've got Scream 6, another movie that put up franchise best numbers here in March. In its third week, drops 51.5%, standard for a horror movie. It takes in $8.4 million to bring its total domestic haul to $89 million off of a $35 million budget. Another movie, much like Creed, much like John Wick, that is just putting up absolutely stellar numbers for its franchise and shows that even 6 movies in, there is still a lot to be mined from this franchise. And rounding out the top 5 is a movie that I don't know how it's still in the top 5, but it's 65 in its third week, dropping 44.5%. It takes in $3 million to bring its total domestic haul to $27 million off of a $45 million budget. We take a look at the back 5. Jonathan Majors showing up again here in the 6th spot. Ant-Man and the Wasp, much like Shazam right now. It's crazy to be here in 2023 and 2 big budget movies that are not up to par, especially box office wise, is the 2 superhero movies for this year. Is superhero fatigue finally showing it's finally showing signs of wear and tear here? I don't think so. I think it's just because the movies aren't that great. I'm sure when Guardians of the Galaxy rolls around, that movie is going to do just fine. But it just goes to show, I think at this point, that most people aren't going to show up for just your standard superhero movie anymore. You need to do something that's new and interesting and exciting to get those asses in the seats. So Ant-Man and the Wasp here in 6th place in its 6th week, drops 42.6%. It takes in $2.4 million to bring its total domestic haul to $209 million off of a $200 million budget. It is not a great sign that it took 6 weeks for this movie to only pass its initial budget domestically. Not a great sign for the MCU to kick off 2023 and Phase 5. In 7th place, we've got Cocaine Bear in its 5th week, drops 47.2%, takes in about $2 million to bring its total domestic haul to $62 million off of a $30 million budget. Stellar performance here from Universal. In 8th week, another stellar performance. We've got Jesus Revolution still hanging around in its 5th week, drops 42.6%, takes in $2 million to bring its total domestic haul to $49 million off of a $15 million budget. This is a resounding mid-budget success for Lionsgate. In 9th place, we've got Champions in its 3rd week, dropping 50.4%. It takes in about $1.5 million to bring its total domestic haul to $13 million off of a $6 million budget. So a nice little chunk of change for Focus Features there. And in 10th place, what might be its final week in the top 10, we've got Avatar: The Way of Water in its 15th week, dropping 33.3%, taking in $1.4 million to bring its total domestic haul to $680 million off of a $460 million budget. And now, as always, we like to take a look at our fallen heroes. I'm moving it up here to right off of the top 10 because it is a stellar movie this time that is dropping out of the top 10. It is a franchise absolute beauty of a movie that just did insane numbers. Avatar's still holding strong, but we take a look now here. If we look in our gone but not forgotten, Puss in Boots, after 13 stellar weeks in the top 10, finally bows out of the top 10. You did your time. You absolutely had your say. You had 13 stellar weeks of say here. It was just an absolute performance. Congratulations to you, Puss in Boots. That's a Hall of Fame performance here post 2020. You did your say, you had made your money, and now we will see you in greener passages. We'll see you in physical media. Actually, you've been on physical media already. I actually own you for like the last 2 weeks, so it's crazy that this movie's only now bowing out of the top 10. You had an absolutely stellar performance, and we will see you when we see you. And as always, we salute you. Now, as always, we'd like to take a look at our top 10 worldwide and our top 10 domestic. We are still charting along worldwide for 2022 simply because Avatar is still in there. Now, as the same week for last week, we are not going to show you the chart for the top 10 worldwide 2022 because it's basically just showing Avatar making more money. It's still in third place. It's going to stay in third place. It's about to drop out of the top 10 probably in the next week or so. If it by a miracle, it may stay in next week, but I'm saying we're probably going to say goodbye to it within the next week or so. So it looks like it's going to stay in the third spot. We're going to keep chugging along, and when it finally has its say, we'll take one last look at that chart. But it's in third place, has no shot of overtaking Avengers Endgame or even fucking. Actually, I don't know what I'm talking about. As you can see, I still have John Wick on the mind because I don't know what I'm talking about because we're looking at top 10 worldwide of 2022, which means Avatar: The Way of Water is in first place. It's not behind anything. We're not talking worldwide grossers yet of all time because I don't know what I'm talking about. It's late at night. I just watched a 3-hour epic. Bear with me. We're still not going to look at the chart because Avatar is in first place. We've known Avatar's been in first place. It's just collecting money. It's at $2.3 billion. That's a stonking amount of money. And we're going to chart along until it's out of the top 10 where it is. But that's what we're going with right now. For top 10 worldwide 2022, we know Avatar is in first, and that's where it's going to stay. But we will, however, take a look here at the top 10 worldwide for 2023. And we look right here in first place, Full River Red, still in first with 673 million. In second, The Wandering Earth 2 with 600 million. In third place, the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania with 466 million. In fourth place, we got Creed 3 with 245. Boonie Bears rounding out the top 5 with 218 million. Megan in sixth with 176 million. Scream 6 and 7th with 139 million. John Wick Chapter 4 debuting in the top 10 worldwide its opening weekend. It sits pretty right now at 137 million. So that is a huge opening weekend for them. Already made back their initial budget, at least worldwide. So that is amazing to see. And in ninth place, you've got Hidden Blade with 136. And in 10th, we've got Deep Sea with 134. And with the debut of John Wick Chapter 4, it knocks out our last movie right there. At the bottom, you see knocking out Pathan. We also have to look here on our domestic front, and once again, we're not going to look at the top 10 domestic for 2022. We will go back to it once Avatar finally has its final say. For this one, in top 10 domestic of 2022, it's still sitting pretty in second place, right behind Top Gun Maverick. Still making money, still doesn't have a shot right now of passing Top Gun Maverick for number one, so it's probably going to settle here for number two. We will go back and look at it once it's had its final say, and we're finally done and this movie's out of theaters finally, and it's finally got its final tally. But for now, just know it's sitting pretty in second place behind Top Gun Maverick. But of course, we will take a look at our top 10 domestic for 2023. And we see right here in first place for the time being is Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania with 209 million. Right behind that is Creed 3 with 140 million. Megan in third with 95. Scream 6 right behind that with 89 million. Debuting right there in the top 5 is John Wick Chapter 4 with 73 million. Right behind that is Cocaine Bear with 62. Jesus Revolution with 49, Shazam Fury of the Gods with 46, 80 for Brady with 39, Knock at the Cabin with 35, and knocked out of that top 10 after looking from the previous weeks is Missing and Plain. And now we talked before, we are finally onto it now. I didn't know what I was talking about before, but we are there now, looking at our highest grossing worldwide and domestic movies of all time. Now again, I was right before, we're still not going to show you the highest grossing worldwide of all time chart simply because there has been no change. I was right in what I said before. Avatar is still sitting in third place. It has zero shot of passing Avengers Endgame at this point, so it's going to settle for third. So we will finally go to this chart when this movie has had its say, and we can see where it's going to finally add up with its tally and settle in there in third. But right now, it's at freaking $2.3 billion. We're not going to look at our highest domestic grossers of all time either. I guess we'll finally return to these charts at the end when Avatar's finally out, because I think it's finally settled into its spots, especially here domestically too. It passed Avengers Infinity War last week. It's settling in right in front of that. And Black Panther is at 700 million. Avengers. I'm lost. I'm lost. I'm absolutely lost today. Avatar: The Way of Water is sitting at 680 million. So it's about 20 million away from Black Panther at 700 million. I don't think this movie's got another 20 million left in it, so I think it's safe to say it's going to settle in right here behind Black Panther. So we will wait and we will return to these charts when it's finally had its say and it finally shows what the final tally is for Avatar: The Way of Water. And it's crazy now that we have to just continue and chug along against another two ones. It's been a long time. We know I have my 2023 blockbuster status chart. We haven't been able to go back to it because no movie has passed domestically 100 million yet. It's absolutely crazy. The last one we saw that we were able to do it was Creed 3 at the beginning of March. I'm sure next week we'll finally be able to go back to it with John Wick, but it's just crazy how long it's been since we've seen it. Still only 3 movies in that blockbuster status chart. And not only that, but we haven't even been able to go back to any movie that's been able, our chart that for any movie that can hold number one for more than 1 week in 2023. It's absolutely insane that we haven't had one since Ant-Man. Ant-Man held the box office 2 weeks in a row. Since March, a new movie has had number one every week. It's absolutely insane. Creed the first week, Scream the next week, Shazam the next week, John Wick this weekend. Will Dungeons and Dragons finally go for the repeat and keep us from having another one? Or is John Wick going to be able to overtake Dungeons and Dragons and have that amazing holdover? It's going to be really interesting to see the box office next week. And it's crazy. I think we're probably not going to get this chart back until Super Mario debuts. Because I think the weekend Super Mario debuts, it's absolutely going to win it. I think the weekend after that, I don't think there's much in its way that I think Super Mario Brothers is probably going to repeat a few weeks until Guardians of the Galaxy kicks off the summer. So I think it's going to be at least another few weeks before we even get to look at this chart again. I know I said even twice. I am Jimmy 2 times from Goodfellas right now. I don't know what I'm saying. But before we bow out, we will take a look at our chart riders. We're going to take a look at our boys right now and see just how well it's going. Who's got the best legs here at the box office? Let's take a look at that good old chart. Now, as you can see, I have way more movies than the top 10 in right now, just as we're charting along with it. I'm just doing every movie for right now so I can just chart along with it and see how it's going. And of course, if you can look at the bottom, Shazam, Fear of the Gods with 2 weeks. Operation Fortune ahead of it, locked in at 2 weeks. It's already bowed out. Right ahead of that, Champions, N65, and Scream 3 all add 3 weeks. Those 3 movies are chugging along. Magic Mike's Last Dance and Knock at the Cabin right ahead of it at 4 weeks, locked in right there. Creed 3 at 4 weeks now. I'm sure it's going to just keep chugging along up the top 10 right now. It's 5 weeks, it's still in second place, so I'm sure that movie's not going anywhere for a little while. Right ahead of that, you got 80 for Brady and Plane, both at 5 weeks, locked in. They are both out of the top 10 now. Jesus Revolution and Cocaine Bear both got 5 weeks apiece in there, and they are also charting right up the chart riders. Right ahead of that, you got Missing and Megan both locked in at 6 weeks. Ant-Man and the Wasp in 4th place with 6 weeks right now. A Man Called Otto is the movie to beat with 8 weeks in 3rd place right there, at least for the movies that have come out in 2023. But you got a ways to go if any movie wants to take the top spot in that chart, because sitting in 2nd and 1st place are our holdover movies from 2022. You got Puss in Boots at 11 weeks, finally locked in. This movie finally, after so many weeks, bows out of the top 10. It is locked in at 11 weeks for 2023, but ahead of it, taking the number 1 seed now, is Avatar: The Way of Water at 12 weeks. Will it get locked in at 12 weeks, or will it be able to survive 1 more week in the top 10 come next week? And that'll do it for all of us here this weekend at the box office. It was a stellar weekend. John Wick, absolutely huge performance. It's so amazing to see. Love these movies. They've managed to get better with age, better with each movie. They are just an absolute masterclass in how to do action. March has been one stellar month here at the box office and here for movie quality. Creed 3, stellar entry into the franchise. Scream 6, while it is one of my lesser favorites of that franchise, still had a lot of gory kills and a lot of great spots about it to be a worthy entry in the franchise. Even though Shazam barreled and just destroyed itself off on impact. I don't think that movie deserves as much hate. I think it was just fine. It's certainly a decent movie to come out. Certainly deserves better than it is doing at the box office. And then we had John Wick this past weekend, just an absolute masterclass in action, an epic, one of my favorite action movies of all time, one of the easily the best movie to come out this year so far. It is my favorite movie of the year right now, so it's going to take a lot to beat that boy. It is an absolute 5-star classic from me. That movie is just absolutely chef's kiss. And it'll be interesting to see if we're able to finish off March with a bang, and Dungeons and Dragons is going to be able to hit that mark and absolutely do some business. I'm hoping so. I predicted it to be my biggest box office bomb of 2023, at least as those big budget blockbusters go. But it looks like it might be Shazam right now. I mean, it's Shazam absolutely imploded on impact. So right now the marker is not high for Dungeons and Dragons to beat. If it can beat a $30 million opening weekend, we might be looking at Shazam being the biggest box office bomb of the year. It's gonna be it's still a hard bet. I think it's still gonna be interesting. It's still gonna be crazy to see, and I can't wait to see the box office next weekend. Is gonna be amazing. You've got John Wick still vying for #1, and the holdover on that movie I'm sure is gonna be phenomenal because the movie is just absolutely amazing. You're gonna get people going to see that again, people seeing it for the first time. So Dungeons and Dragons has its work cut out for them. It is going to be epically amazing to watch that battle next weekend, and I can't wait to see you back here next Sunday when we can talk all about it. But that'll do it for all of us here at the Outpost. Until the next adventure, you have been you, I have been me. These are the movies we love so much. Get your ass out and see John Wick if you haven't yet. It is an absolute classic. And until next time, I'll see you at the movies.